Today we're going to talk about the equation of a line. Now, when we describe a line using a formula, there are two ways that we can do it. We can use the functional form, which is y is equal to mx plus b. From this form, we can determine our slope, which is equal to our m. We can determine our y-intercept, which is equal to b. And our x-intercept is equal to the negative of our b divided by our m. So this is the form that we use most often when we're describing a line. However, this equation of a line doesn't work when we're describing a vertical line. For that, you would need to use the general form. So let's use a different color to indicate that. Yeah. So the general form can be used to describe any line, including vertical lines. And this is described as ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. Now, to find our slope and intercepts is not as easy with this one. It's a little bit more complex. So for our slope, we will take the negative of our a divided by our b. For our y-intercept, we would take our negative c divided by our b, and the x-intercept is negative c divided by our a. Now, just to kind of review what all these things mean, if we have a graph, oops, let's redraw that graph. That was not very nice. So if we have a graph, we have our y-axis and our x-axis here, and we have a line. The slope tells us how steep something is. So this is our slope, is basically our rise over the run. Gives us the slope. So slope, whoops, the slope is equal to the rise over the run. Now, this point here is our y-intercept, where it crosses through the y-axis. Let's draw another graph. This time we're going down here. So, like I said, this part is our y-intercept. I did not spell that correctly, but that's okay. This point here where it crosses your x-axis, this is your x-intercept. So, without even looking at a picture of the graph, you can determine all of these different things from your formula. So let's do a couple of examples. Let's just erase this all here. So let's do an example with functional form first. So let's say we have this y is equal to negative 2x plus 1. From here, we can determine that our slope is negative 2. Our y-intercept is positive 1. And our x-intercept will be the negative of this b, so it'll be negative 1 divided by our m, which is negative 2, which is equal to 0.5. It's positive 0.5. Similarly, if we're given that kind of information, we can find what our formula is. So let's say that we know the slope is 4, and we know that the y-intercept is -13. We know how to write the formula. This is our m, and this is our b. So y is equal to our m, which is 4, times x, plus our b, which is, in this case, -13. So this is your formula. Now let's try an example using the general form. So let's say we have this formula here. Let's say we have 2x plus 3y minus 4 is equal to 0. To find our slope, we have to take the negative of our a. So let's label our a, b, and c values here. So we have a 2 for our a, but we have to put a negative in front. And then the b is 3, which is underneath. This, you can leave it as a fraction because it will give you a repeating decimal. But if you really do want to turn it into a decimal, it can become 0.67. You would round it up to this. Now your y-intercept, you take your c here, so -4, put that in brackets, because you're going to have to put a negative in front of that. And then you put it over b. So negative times negative will give you +4 on top, over 3. And again, you can leave this as a fraction because it will give you a repeating decimal. If you don't want to leave it as a fraction, then it will become 1.33 repeating essentially. I've run out of room, so I'm going to do the x-intercept up here. So again, I have my c, that's -4 in brackets. I have to put a negative in front of it. And then it's divided by my a, so it's 2 here. Negative times negative gives me +4 over 2. 4 divided by 2 will give me a whole number of 2. So my x-intercept will be at x is equal to 2. Now, if you've been given your slope and all that kind of stuff, you can find your formula as well. It's a little bit more complicated though. So let's use this example right here. So the slope is 4 over 5. And let's say that it actually passes through point 3 and 5. So we know that our slope has to be equal to the negative a over b. So we can identify our b very quickly. B is 5 here. So I'm going to just go up here, a, b, and c. So my b is 5. That's pretty easily described. However, my a is not going to be +4. And the reason for that is because we have this negative in front here. So if we wanted to determine what my a is going to be, I'm going to put -a is equal to the top number up here, 4. I need to get a to be positive. So I'm going to divide by -1. 4 divided by -1 will give me -4. So my a is actually -4 up here. I'll just erase this because the next step, we need to find what our c is. Now we don't have our y or x intercept to find what our c is, but we do have this point that it passes through. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these into the formula, replacing the a and the b. Then we're going to take these and take the x value, put it where the x is, and our y value and put it where the y value is. And then we're going to solve for c that way. So it'll be negative 4x plus 5y plus c is equal to 0. And then negative 4 times my 3, which is here, this is the x, plus 5 times my y, which is 5, plus c is equal to 0. This will give me negative 12 plus 25 plus c is equal to 0. So when you do that calculation, make sure you don't forget that negative. So negative 12 plus 25 give you 13. And the last step is you need to bring this over to the other side, and that becomes negative 13. So I've calculated my c, and that is negative 13. The last step is that I'm going to have to write my rule. So negative 4. Now when I write my rule, I keep the x and I keep the y. I only used this to find what my c is. So negative 4x plus 5y, and then this is going to be my c, so minus 13 is equal to 0. And that is my equation here. So let's take a look at yet another example just to kind of solidify everything here. I'm just going to erase this all so that I have the adequate space. So in this example, we want to find the equation of the line both functional and general. So let's say that we've been given slope is 5 and it passes through point 2 and 5. So if we look at this, because our slope is a whole number, it's probably easier to use the functional form. So whenever you have a fraction, finding the general form first would be easiest. When you have a whole number, finding your functional form will be the easiest. So we're going to do functional form first. So functional is equal to y is equal to mx plus b. So we know that our slope, we know that m is equal to 5, but we don't know what b is. However, we have this point here that this line goes through, and this is our x and our y. So we can find what our b is by putting in our slope for our m, and then putting the 2 for our x, and then the 5 for the y. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll put in my slope first, and then I'll put in my y and my x. Now remember, these are multiplied here. So 5 is equal to 5 times 2 plus b. 5 times 2 is 10. I'm going to take this positive 10, bring it over to the other side. this becomes negative 10 plus 5 equals b, which equals negative 5. So my b is equal to negative 5. Just going to erase this here to give more space. So now my rule is going to turn out like this. Y is equal to 5 times x minus 5. So now we want to find what our general form is. Now you can do this two ways. You can do it using this information up here, or you can simply rearrange this formula so that you have 0 on one side and you have moved everything else onto the other side. So I'll show you how to do that version. So I have my y is equal to 5x minus 5. I want to bring everything over to this side of the equation. So I'll bring this one over first. When I bring it over, it becomes negative 5x plus y is equal to negative 5. Now I want to make this side equal to 0, so I'm going to bring this guy over to this side here. So it becomes negative 5x plus y. This negative becomes positive, so it becomes positive 5 is equal to 0. So my rule is negative 5x plus y plus 5 is equal to 0. So these two formulas describe the same line, but they're just written in different forms. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys next time when we talk about parallel and perpendicular lines.